The world feels a bit toxic and blah these days, doesn't it? The same old people coming up with the same old solutions for big problems that still don't work. We need to change the game. Well, welcome to Women Advancing. Join me, host Kate Byrne, in this dynamic bi-weekly podcast, bringing together female founders, funders, and thought leaders. Listen to the people driving change, how they got there, how you can help, and yep, how you might just be the next one to advance. Proof that all ships rise with women at the helm. That's what happens when Women Advance with Kate Byrne. Hey everybody, it's your host Kate Byrne with Women Advancing. Reinvention, it's not a buzzword. In this day and age, it's a survival skill. So many of us know that feeling. Man, one day you're flying high, you've built this career, you've climbed that ladder, you've checked all the boxes. And then the next day you wake up and you're like, I hate that. I hate that. And at the same time, it's also kind of exciting because you realize that on that day, it no longer fits for you. It means you've grown. You're ready to expand beyond. And for our guest today, the founder and coach, Johanna Danaher, that moment came after 25 years in the corporate world. And when that came to an end, a new chapter was sparked. And so tapping experiences, which many of us have had, coming from motherhood, various forms of grief, health diagnosis, career of zigzags, that's something she created a whole new book, as it were, that became Anchor to Inspire, which is her coaching practice that's grounded in that whole paradox that you have to leap forward. You have to ground yourself. You got to anchor yourself in your values, your identity, your energy, and then you got to aspire what's possible. So her whole reason for being is to help women pause before the next leap and then fly forward. In our conversation, sure, we talk a lot about that. Absolutely. But we also tap into the whole notion of this idea of the future of work. Hi, everyone. It's already here. Yes, there's a lot of things that we need to start navigating, be it hybrid teams to AI disruption, multi-generational workplace, something that is near and dear to my heart. Cognitive capacity, AKA to all of us, critical thinking, that's near and dear to my heart as well, which is that ability to hold multiple perspectives and sit with complexity. I call it looking at an issue with dragonfly eye, is fast becoming one of the most critical leadership skills. And you want to know something? You build that one up, that will be your ticket to relevance, period, the end. And then really how women can learn to navigate boundaries and burnout by accepting some help, leaning on some others, and getting some suggestions. So I honestly think that you will love this conversation. It's about courage, resilience, finding joy in that paradox, that messiness of chaos and beauty, turbulence and peace. Johanna's very raw and vulnerable story. It's just a reminder that, you know what? Reinvention, it's not about going back. It's about painting what's coming forward and then going after it and getting it done. Let's listen in and let me know what you think. And by all means, please let me know if there are other subjects that you'd like to listen to. Oh my gosh, Women Advancing listeners, welcome to you, but a special welcome to what is going to be an extraordinary conversation with such an insightful and wise person. And that person is none other than the founder of Anchor to Inspire, Johanna Danaher. Johanna, welcome to Women Advancing.
Thank you so much. I am so thrilled to be here to talk with you, to talk with your listeners, and to, have this amazing conversation together.
So Johanna is magical because we're going to talk a little bit about future of work for sure, but we're also going to talk about your place as you ride the many waves of work and notions such as reinvention of self, which is particularly relevant given the crazy times we find ourselves in. But I'm going to just go ahead and jump into it if I might. You ready?
Love that. I am.
All right. I want to kick off a bit with reinvention of self, because that is something I know that both you and I have lived many lives. So you've built Anchor to Aspire around that whole idea of reinvention. For you personally, what did reinvention look for you and what kind of sparked that journey?
Yeah, yeah. So this is a great question because I think there's multiple times in my life where reinvention has played a part. Most recently, when formed Anchor to Aspire, it was after losing my corporate role, and I had been in a corporate environment for 25 years. It was a very long, incredibly meaningful, and amazing career, and it ended. Right. And it ended at a period where I wasn't quite ready for it to end. I was planning, sort of starting to think about what would semi-early retirement look like, but I was still fully, invested, engaged, passionate in the work that I was doing, and that ended, right? So, the spark for reinvention came at that moment in time, right? What do I do now? How do
Right.
I define myself without the title, without the job, without the sort of corporate entity that I actually called home for so long. So that was, really where this the genesis of Anchor to Aspire came from was at that moment.
So when that happened, I mean, I know for myself, it's just such a surreal situation you find yourself in. You get in your car, you're driving away. At least in my case, it was earlier day, and you're like, did this just actually happen? And to your point, what was that? I mean, for you personally, like on a mental self worth level, what was that like?
So for me, it was every emotion, right? That you
Yeah,
were
all the
talking about
feels.
there, all of them. There was relief in some ways because
Yeah.
my company had been going through significant transformations, and there were workforce reductions, there were organization structures, and there was a little bit of a relief. Okay, now I know, right? I don't have to live through this again. So there was that. There was sorrow. I had put a lot of my time, my energy, I defined myself by my role. So there was grief and sorrow for that loss. There was also a little bit of joy because the change did have, uh, the impact of another colleague getting promoted, so I was happy to
Mhm.
see that. There was also anger, right, because I was frustrated with the fact that I was let go and another colleague was also let go, so there was everything sort of coming into the mix, and there was this moment where I also felt sort of untethered, I guess
Yeah.
is the word I'd use, because I didn't really know, well, what happens next? And that was really a moment of reflection point for me. Well, what does happen now? And how do I figure it out?
So I'm debating because I love the meaning behind Anchor and Aspire. So let's go to that. I want you to talk a little bit and share because I think, the meaning of the name Anchor to Aspire. Share a little bit about that and how it kind of reflects your whole notion and your approach, I should say, to such a transformation.
So Anchor to Aspire, I chose that name very intentionally, right? And I chose it because of the paradox that the ocean actually represents, right? It's chaos versus serenity. It is calm versus destruction. In many ways, it's the giver of all life, and it can take life,
Yeah.
right? So the idea is we can exist in paradox. We can hold two things that seem equally opposite to be equally true at any given moment, right? There is joy and grief can be things that we experience at the same time.
Mhm.
Happiness and despair. It sounds like you can't, but yeah, you can. You can be holding those two emotions together. Change and uncertainty. So the paradox of life is represented by the name of Anchor to Aspire, and it started from thinking about the ocean and thinking about then how you have to be anchored in who you truly are. That deep knowledge, that deep self-awareness and that authenticity, right? Before you can truly to aspire to be and operate at your highest potential, right? If we're not anchored in ourselves,
Right.
we're never going to be able to aspire to something greater. And the other paradox here that I like to talk about is because I had somebody actually ask me, they're like, well, doesn't an anchor hold you still and hold you back? It's like anchored in the ground. And I was like, well, actually, no, it doesn't. It's anchoring you in your values. but it allows you to switch to sort of move, right? When you
Sure.
think about an anchor at sea, it's holding you steady, but it does shift. It does pick itself up. It does reset. So it allows you to shift and change while keeping you grounded in yourself.
The situations, which is so incredibly important, I know, in the months to come with all the various changes that are taking place out in the world.
Yeah.
Many women are right now facing this moment, or they begin to, when, the life or the career they've built doesn't fit. You outgrow.
Hmm.
And to your point, you were kind of there, but you're like, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. So, what advice do you give to those who are standing at that crossroads of,
Mm.
on the one hand, like my old tricks, this just an I wish it felt familiar. I wish it felt comfortable, and it doesn't, not because it's
Mhm.
too small and I'm too big.
There's a couple things, and it's kind of sound a little counterintuitive, right? Because the first thing I would recommend is to pause. Don't rush into the next thing. But I say pause for a very specific reason because it's about getting curious. It's about pausing and really understanding what no longer fits me. Is it the work that I'm doing? Is it the pace that I'm actually doing it at? Is it my values being misaligned with the organization that I'm operating in or the work that I'm doing? Is it that I'm no longer energized by what I'm doing? So what is it that really no longer fits? What's driving that feeling that you have that you're stuck or you want something different? And then it's really understanding and anchoring into what matters most for you, right? So it's really understanding your values, really understanding your energy, and really understanding your well being. Those three things are critical, right? And when I talk about values, a lot of us have done values assessments at a
Yes,
period of time, probably did it early in our career, probably haven't looked at it again. And now we're 20, 30, 15 years into our career. The values that anchored us then may not be the values that anchor us now. So think about what really matters to me at this moment in time, and then start to think about moving into something that's more aligned. And I also think for me, the myth of the sort of safety net, right? That the corporate world or the stability that I
yes,
had in my role, that's a myth, right?
totally.
Stability does not exist. And also, when the perception of stability, oftentimes we confuse that with fulfillment. So sometimes what feels safe or normal or the thing I should do is actually the thing that's draining you. So that's the advice is pause and really get curious and ask yourself those questions.
I'm so glad you brought that's I love that last piece because as we know, there's nothing worse than working half-hearted at all. Talk about the drain. But I'm so glad you brought up the piece about that our values can shift. I spoke with Susie Welch about this and we went round and around because she says, "Oh no, your values are your values and they stay." And my experience is there might be one or two, but I think
Hmm.
there's so much contextual context that fuels and informs you, and that's what helps you kind of shift. So how do you help clients balance that anchor part,
Hmm.
right, with the aspire part?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different ways. I mean, some of the things I really will do is really start with what energizes you, right? So, what is your energy showing? How are you showing up in the days that are the best days, and how are you showing up under stress, right? Because your energy tells you a lot, and it will
Mhm.
help you to understand where do you have deep satisfaction and where is that mismatch happening. Then I work with clients on understanding, well, now I know what's happening. I know how I'm showing up under my best potential and those stressful moments, but I don't know why. I don't know what's sabotaging me. What's actually the trigger that's bringing me there? And then how do I actually work with addressing that? Is it my inner critic? Is it my sort of imposter syndrome? Is it the belief that I have to do it all? What's underneath all of this? Is it people pleasing? Is it control, fear, what have you? So, understanding what's energizing us and understanding then what's holding us back are key. we can't go anywhere, right, until we understand those types of things. And then we do a values assessment, right? And the values assessment is important. As you said, there might be 2 or 3 things that really are core and central to you, but there are other values that may come in and out of your life at different times depending upon your situation. You're a
Mhm.
caregiver, right? Maybe you're a caregiver of an aging parent. Something that's going to be a deep value for you today might not be the same thing as it was when you were early in your career. So let's look at that, right? It's not to say our values have to completely change. It just doesn't have to recognize that there are some things that are becoming more versus less important. And then we can start to move into thinking about the aspire aspect of it once we understand what's energizing us, what we value, and really that deep component of actually what's sabotaging our behaviors.
Which is, God, huge and key. So, okay, so and with that all in mind, then with that in place, I mean, then you're gonna be better able to kind of probably ride the various shifts that
Hmm.
are taking place in the world around you, both probably, I would assume personally and professionally.
Absolutely, 100%, right? Because when we know the things that where our energy is going, right? Is it energy that is inspiring or is it energy that's draining, right? When we understand that, then we can ride the waves, right? And I love that talking about sort of riding the waves because the waves are always there, right? Sometimes they might be small, sometimes they're really big. They're always there. And we can choose consciously how we respond to those waves. And we can only choose consciously if we understand ourselves and what matters to us deeply. Right? Conscious choice for me is something I cultivate daily, moving from that sort of reaction to the response, right? I want to be consciously choosing how I am responding to any situation that comes at me versus acting from impulse or, that sort of automatic response.
Right, a little prefrontal cortex versus your amygdala.
Oh,
Exactly.
yes.
Well, so with that in mind, what are some of the shifts that you see shaping the future of work, and what are some tips? Tell us, Yoda, how how should we be preparing for them? Because I gotta say, it's getting a little, I mean, it's always been tricky, but particularly now, I feel as though there are more targets around us on
Mm.
not just our backs, but pick a body part.
Yeah, I think for me, there's this question, right? We ask the question, well, what's about the future of work? Let's predict the future of work. And there's a lot of wonderful articles and some really deep thinking that's happening. And my answer is the future of work isn't something that's coming. It's already here,
You're
right?
in
The
it.
future we're in it. The future of work is now. And I think that's an important thing to reflect on because now is all we have, right? There's the past and then there's the future, but now is the present moment. And it's always going to be changing. So when I think about the future of work, I think about change. I think about the ability to cultivate agility, resiliency, to recognize that, change is the only thing that we can hold constant and embrace it. With change comes opportunity. It is scary. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. It is scary, but it is where opportunity lies. And so I think that's an important thing to think about and that's what's shaping, the future of work is the fact that we have to embrace this change. AI is out there. I mean, obviously everybody's talking about AI, everybody's talking about sort of hybrid workplaces, hybrid ways of working. That's the norm in today's environment. But I also think that there's this need for belonging. There's an increased need for clarity. There's this sort of deeper need for human connection. The loneliness pandemic, there's a lot of writing about that out there, and it's real and it's true. Deep human connection that's real, that's not based on fear of missing out or based on, anything,
right.
right? Deep connection is something that, we will need to continue to cultivate in the future of work.
So, the when you were saying that, the truth is too, yeah, change is scary, the unknown is scary, but there's also a really thin line between fear and excitement.
Yes.
So probably if you try to fuel and look at it as curious, I wonder what I'll learn. Also, with AI, the things you just talked about, collaborative, team, all of that. There's been so much talk in past times when technologies have come about. Women are
Mhm.
oftentimes somewhat left behind. To encourage all of us to recognize as this technology is actually one that plays completely to our intrinsic natural proclivities of
Mhm.
being collaborative, being community oriented, being working together. And so if everyone can play around to get in there and just sort of take see what it's like and start
Mhm.
learning about these things and seeing it as, you know, a partner, researcher. So you can do all the things that make you shine and beautiful
Yeah.
and bright. And it can do it can do the dishes while you get
Yes.
to go take all the compliments about the meal.
Exactly. I mean, AI is something that augments us, right? It's a
Right.
tool that we can use to really enhance what it is that we're producing. There was actually a number of really great articles that have been out there right now about AI and how to use it. And to recognize that it is something that can be leveraged in a way that drives our, productivity in a different way, that enables us to take data and insights and then turn those insights into action, right? So data is just data. Insights are just insights. We, the human, have to go beyond the data and the insights to the experience, the meaning and emotion. So AI can help us really take that, disparate pieces of data, help us craft some insights in different ways that we might not be able to do in a much faster way so we can actually turn something that we're learning into an insight that drives an action that creates a new experience that has that meaning and that emotion, right? So it's really thinking about how do we use the AI in a way that augments what we bring to the table already, that deep reflection, that human connection, that co-creation and collaboration in a way that actually does it faster.
Now, concerns regarding
Mhm.
I'm gonna say technology in general. I'm not gonna even just make AI the bad person because
Yeah.
AI, as you've said, it is here. It's been here for a lot longer than probably any of us even recognize. So there's gonna be more, and they're gonna
Yeah.
become so reliance on and the depth and the breadth of our reliance on technology. Concerns. Tell me.
Yeah, so there was actually a great article today in Harvard Business Review on this, and it was something I was, like, sort of diving into and reflecting on this morning. And what concerns me is that oftentimes with technology, we can offload, and this is what the article talked about, offloading our critical thinking. So that's the concern I have, right? And I think that if we use AI correctly and if we use it to the best of our ability, we're augmenting our critical thinking. We're augmenting our ability to take those disparate dots and connect them into a story, right? People often used to say to me, they're like, you see the forest through the trees and you see each and every tree. And I'm like, well, yeah, because all of these are pieces of information and then we can create and craft and pull them together into a story or an insight and that enables us to move something forward. And people were always like, how did you get there from here? I'm like, well, I'm looking at different pieces of data and I'm listening and I'm asking questions and I'm reflecting and I'm talking about lived experience as well. So that's how I got here because I looked at all of these pieces as opposed to just two or three. And that's how I think we can leverage AI. But the concern that I have is that many of us are just going to offload to the AI and not embrace our own critical thinking and our cognitive capacity.
I had a dear friend who's a structural engineer, and that used to drive him crazy.
Yeah, I was gonna say a great example, we were at our dock, and my sister-in-law and her daughter had their boat in the water, and they were taking it out. They hadn't been down for a few days, and it had rained, like, we haven't gotten any rain in Connecticut in forever, but it rained, and they had to pump it out, but it was out of battery, so they were like, "Okay, got the battery started, now the pump isn't working." So they had to get in, and they're underneath, and they're there, and they're trying to, like, reach the thing, almost doing a headstand in the bilge of the boat, and the bilge pump was in the place that schematically made the most sense for it to be, but you could not actually work on it. You couldn't reach it. So when it didn't have the power, it had gotten jostled out, you couldn't get it back on. So we had to, like, really take apart and unscrew part of the boat to actually access it because it was in the right place, but it wasn't actually accessible by humans to be able to fix it.
True.
So that was just a great example of it was perfect, but not.
Exactly. So take a beat. And it's funny, the opening episode for this Women Advancing season was with editor in chief of Harvard Business Review. And that's what we spoke about was critical thinking. And far away, you've got all of those generations, you've got new technology coming at you. How does coaching people not just survive, but actually thrive in this constantly evolving landscape?
So I think there's a couple of things, right? For me, and I work with a coach, right? I'm a coach who works with a coach, and I fully and firmly believe that every coach needs a coach because it helps us slow down. It helps
Yeah,
me to take that pause. It helps me to, in the craziness of the busy world that we live in, it really helps me to pause. I actually wrote about this on LinkedIn not too long ago. It was a quote from Socrates about, beware the barrenness of a busy life. And it's just amazing, right? When you think about that, you're like, the barrenness of a busy life. You're like, I'm so busy, I'm not present, right? So that idea that coaching can actually help carve out that time for you to be fully present with yourself, that's an important component of it. It is really making the space to
yeah,
focus on me. And that's something many women don't do. I know I'm guilty of that. Self care goes to the bottom of my list. Focusing on myself is always and has always been something I don't do, even though I teach about it and I teach about the importance of it. So for me, in my coaching with my clients, it's all about creating that space and that permission to pause, giving
right,
myself permission to pause.
right, right. In general,
Hmm.
uh, yeah, and I think, huh, to that point, when you do give yourself that permission to do that, you actually can respond versus react 9 times after 10. But are there patterns that you're sort of seeing now across the women that with whom you're working? Um,
Hmm.
it could either be shared challenges or their sources of strength. And is there a difference between generation? Are there some that are just we are wired that way still because of our from whom our mothers were and grandmothers
Yeah.
were? We're still working out some of those past generational kinks.
So I would say yes, right, to all of those things that you just highlighted. I think the things that I'm seeing really across most of my clients that I've partnered with, recently in Anchor to Aspire, and even in my coaching that I was doing in corporate, is three things. So boundaries and setting boundaries. That's the challenge. It's also a strength, right? So the setting of the boundaries, the belief in the myth that I can do it all, the need for people pleasing, those are the challenges. When we shift that narrative and we focus in on understanding boundaries and why boundaries are important and how we can control those boundaries, then it becomes our strength and it becomes one of our superpowers. Another area that I do see, and this is actually interesting because I see it in different ways depending upon the generation, is imposter syndrome and self doubt. So more of my clients and my peers that I've been working with who are, mid-career, midlife, it's imposter syndrome that's sort of, coming forward. And, I've gotten here and what got me here won't get me there. And I'm not skilled enough to get there. So it's that imposter syndrome and that belief that we don't carry the skills that we need to continue to succeed. It's that self-doubt that's showing up, right? Like, who am I to be where I am? And it's also for the younger generation, the imposter syndrome is showing up differently, right? It's I have never worked in this type of environment. I'm post COVID where I don't know how to make relationships. I don't know how to network. So there's that sort of imposter syndrome showing up in that way that I'm not good enough or people aren't going to like me. So, how do I fit in to the group? That shows up often. Then the third thing is purpose, and this one's also really interesting because it shows up differently.
Mhm.
Purpose for, students, and my daughter is a freshman in college, a sophomore in college now. Purpose is really important to her. doing work that matters, doing work that aligns with her passion area is critical. And she's not going to go work in a place that doesn't align. Purpose for women who have been, in their career for multiple years, it plays an important part, but what comes into the conversation is I have to find my purpose somewhere else besides the workplace. Through volunteerism, through caregiving, through giving back, whatever it may be, it's not going to come to me here in my job. And that's a belief that we have to unpack, right? We have to say, that's actually
Yes.
probably not true. That's a story you're telling yourself, or you're
Right.
holding yourself back from actually finding that purpose in your work.
Exactly, which will also potentially require patience, but yeah,
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. And with the younger generation, I think one of the most outstanding examples of that is when different corporations just said, "Okay, well, we're requiring everybody to come back to work." And big name, formerly sexy brands, Apple, Google, name all the names, and everyone said, "Okay, then I won't work with you."
Yeah.
And I think my generation was like, "What? No,
What? Yeah.
not what? Nobody ever says no to blah, blah, blah." It's like,
Hmm.
well, they do now.
They do now. They're looking for something, and if we can't deliver that, they're looking for that human connection. They're looking for that flexibility. They're looking for the belief that you can do your work regardless of where you are.
Right?
So that's the generations are looking for different things. And this is the first time we have 5 generations in the
Yes.
workplace, and we have to as leaders learn how to, adapt our style and adapt how we communicate and how we engage to multiple different generations. And what I was looking for and the values that sort of brought me into the workplace might be very different than, the values that are bringing this generation into the workplace. Although I
So
will say I did start out my career as a gig worker when before gig working was sexy, so that was where I started.
thank you. I always refer to myself as I was a millennial before I was a millennial, and I'm not a millennial. And it is so, so true. So with all this, what keeps you like, how do you keep growing and sort of nourishing yourself so you can kinda stay present?
A couple things, right? So I would say I'm a lifelong learner, 110%. I love to read books, any genre of book. I love to read thought leadership articles, and I do that every day. So I start my day off every single morning with reading some thought leadership that someone in my network has shared. And that inspires me, right? So it gets me to do some critical thinking, and I start my day that way because I know I process information as I'm making my breakfast, as taking my shower, going for my morning walk. So I always like to start my day with some sort of article that's going to, stimulate some thought. Usually it's something that is in an area I don't know a lot about. It's in an area that some ideas that might be counter or different than the author is saying. So it's stimulating that sort of, reflection. The other thing is I started a book club this year,
Oh,
so
nice.
it's so fun. My girlfriends and I, we all get together and everybody suggests the book that we're gonna read for the month, and so it just brings in a completely different perspective and gives me new books to read that I probably wouldn't have chosen myself, and I'm constantly building my network. What's really important to me is to have a global network, people from various different industries, different countries. It's one of the things I miss about working in a multinational
Mm,
corporation is having that sort of instant access to anyone in
right,
the world. So I'm
right.
intentional about, really creating a network that I can engage with. And I truly believe that the network is not about how many people I know, it's how well my network knows me, right? Because
Oh,
it's about
interesting.
how they know me. And that means that I've been authentic, I've been open, and I've been willing to engage in conversations, to learn.
That is a very great spot on nuance. So, what kind of impact are you hoping that Anchor to Aspire has?
Another great question. And, for me, if I can sort of raise the consciousness of the world one person at a time, right? That's really what I'm trying to do is help people understand that how they show up in stress and in regular environments really is driven by our energy. And our energy is impacted by our environment, by our ability to have mental clarity. It's impacted by our physical health and well-being. It's impacted by our emotions. So all of that aspect makes us unique and human. And how we then cultivate that awareness into doing something that matters is really what I'm hoping that I can help people find. Right. So that's the impact that I'd like to have. I also want to help people find their happiness and find
Yeah.
their joy, right? The joy in the everyday. Happiness is not a destination. And often we think that happiness is going to come to us when we get the promotion, when we have the title, when we buy the big house, when we have, a 401k. Happiness happens every day, and it's a choice we make every day. So how can I help you and clients make that choice and find that happiness every day?
Which is beautiful, and man, what a different world we would be living in
Yeah.
if we all started and ended each day with that
Yeah.
experience and being our
And
lived
it
experience.
and it's hard to do, right? It's
Yeah.
very hard to do. So how do we figure out what are those small, meaningful habits that we truly can make part of our DNA that enable us to find that joy and that happiness and spread that kindness?
Well, and that's exactly what I wanted to ask you is if you could leave listeners with, one practice or mindset shift that kind of embodies that, what would it be?
Mm. So there's a couple of things I would say, right? I talked about it before, the sort of myth
Yeah.
of the busy life, but for me, it's really about the power of pause. No matter what you're doing, pausing and taking a moment to get clear is so important. Before the big leap that you're taking in your career, before the next yes that you say to, anything, whether it's going out with friends or taking on a project, pause. Anchor in what's true to you. Why are you saying yes?
Yeah.
Why are you saying yes? And if it's truly something you want to say yes to, then do it, right? Then jump in feet first and do it. I think that's the important component of this. But pausing, really reflecting, saying no to the things that you want to say no to and not feeling guilt over it, right?
Hmm.
Releasing those things. And then once you've sort of released the clutter that's holding you back, once you've anchored in on the things that you really truly believe are what grounds you, what inspires you, what energizes you, give yourself that permission to sort of go all in, right? So go all in. Invest in those things that matter most. And I think one of the things that I love to say, and we talked about this before, is don't wait for permission. Your
Yes.
life is the permission slip, right? So that is absolutely 100% something I believe. Don't wait for permission to go all in on yourself. Do it now.
In addition to that, in terms of, knowing what you know now, I know that would be probably first and foremost your first nugget of advice you'd give your younger self. Are there other pieces?
Yeah, because you can't give yourself permission to go all in if you first don't trust yourself, if you
Mm,
don't believe in yourself. So it's trusting yourself, right? You can't go all in. You can't
yeah.
jump. You can't take that step to where the magic happens, which is outside of our comfort zone, unless we trust in ourselves and unless we believe in ourselves. We have everything we need to be successful already inside us. So trust yourself.
So true. And the truth is, how can you expect others to trust you if you don't?
Right.
Seriously. That's kind of the piece. That's the little magic, fairy dust that people feel. And then they're like, oh, whoa, that's what helps people hitch their wagon to you. You know?
Yeah. That followership, right? It starts with you and trusting yourself.
Mm. Oh my gosh, Johanna, thank you so much. I've so enjoyed this conversation. Chock-a-block nuggets. I'm going to be sharing links to how to get in touch with you. Are there any like special promotions or things you want to talk about?
Yeah, so thank you so much for that, Kate. And this conversation was just incredible, right? I love having this dialogue with everyone. And I am continuing the conversation. Actually, we're a colleague of mine, a fellow coach, and I are hosting mini webinar series on LinkedIn called Making Waves to Move to Joy, where we unpack different myths. Some of them I've talked about today. Others, our listeners are telling us what those myths are that have come in and hindered them or held them back. So You can always find our Making Waves to Move to Joy episodes on my website, which is anchortoaspire.com, or follow me on LinkedIn, where I'll share information on the next upcoming episodes.
Which is fantastic. And everyone, I will be including all the links and everything on my page and all the socials as well. So please join me in saying thank you, thank you, thank you, Johanna. I really appreciate your time, your generosity of spirit and wisdom, and also all the amazing work that you're doing in helping us all shift. And frankly, anchor to aspire.
Thank you very much. And as we all said, we come together as a community of women. We are here in each other's courts to support one another. So, Kate, thank you so much for creating this space for these types of inspiring conversations. It's very energizing to be a part of it.
My pleasure. Until next time. Hey, everybody. You got to admit, there were some incredible mottos, adages that I think are incredibly memorable, incredibly powerful, and frankly would make some pretty great t-shirts, just saying. So here we go for KB's takeaways. Thanks and compliments to Johanna Danaher, the founder and coach of Anchor to Aspire. First was an interesting take on networking, right? So yeah, sure, it's great. We also often think, oh gosh, more numbers, better, 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 right? But what is the depth of your connection with that network? So ask yourself, not how big is my network? Start asking yourself, how well does my network really know me? That is where I think the magic really will start to happen. Of course, my favorite, we can't say it enough, the power of the pause. Exhale, everybody. You'll be able to move forward in no time and be able to respond versus react. We're going to need that a lot in the coming months and years ahead. Don't confuse achievement with fulfillment. Oh, is that not so true? Just because you did it, did you like doing it? Afterwards, are you proud of what you did? Definitely things to think about. Trust yourself, believe in yourself, do what really makes you happy every day. The thing about trusting yourself is, as I had said in our conversation, if you don't, how can you actually even begin to think that somebody and ask that somebody to trust you? You got to trust, got to start with you, right? When you've got one finger pointing at outside, there's three pointing back at you. So make sure you trust yourself. So as Mary Oliver would say, what are you going to do with this one? Are going to be doing a program called Making Waves to Move to Joy. I think it'll be an amazing webinar. I'll be including that information. Thanks as always for listening and your time. I know you have a place you could be. I'm glad you're letting me into your head, and look forward to the conversation continuing on the next Women Advancing.
Thanks for listening. May this episode inspire you to move forward. Be sure to go to iTunes, Spotify, katebyrne.co, that's KATEBYRNE.co, or wherever you listen to your podcasts, and listen to even more episodes. Here's to strong women. May we know them, may we be them, may we raise them. Be sure to meet them on the next Women Advancing. Ta till next time.